Welcome to the Nazareth College Centennial Podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Nealand, and in each episode I'll be guiding you through stories of amazing alumni, fascinating faculty, or the hidden history of the college. Today's episode, Georgia Conner Youngblood, the first African-American woman to graduate from Nazareth College, class of 1948.
She was fun to be with. She was outgoing. She was certainly a kind and gracious person.
She was very kind, very kind. And I think that's the first word people would say about her.
The least pretentious person you will ever meet.
That was Carleen Tierney, a classmate of Georgia, and her twin sons, David and Dennis Youngblood, who agreed to speak to us by phone. Our story begins in the Jim Crow South, the 1930s and 40s. Georgia Eugenia Conner was born in Cameron, Texas. She's the only child of Willie and Dr. Beatty Eugene Conner, a physician. They lived first in Cameron, Texas, where she attended a one-room schoolhouse, which she later credited with preparing her for academic success. Years later, when her family moved to Austin, Texas, Georgia was advanced to 2 grade levels, which means that when she came to Nazareth, she was all of 15 years old. Georgia grew up in the Jim Crow South.
Her experience was having grown up in Austin, in the community she grew up in, where everything she saw was black. That is to say, the doctors, the lawyers, the shopkeepers, the business owners. Rarely did she go outside of East Austin. And all of East Austin were, everything you needed, a movie theater, a bowling alley, a barber, restaurants, all of it.
Her father, Dr. Conner, was not given admitting privileges to the local hospitals. He had to turn his patients over to white practitioners who would then care for them in the hospital. One day, Dr. Conner was passing Holy Cross Church in Austin and saw some nuns outside cleaning up what looked like medical equipment. Unable to resist asking what they were doing, they replied that they were setting up a hospital for black patients. Holy Cross Hospital in Austin was the first integrated hospital in that city. Some have said the first black Catholic hospital in the state of Texas, and some people have even claimed it was the first integrated hospital in the entire South, where African Americans were first allowed to have hospital births. The Mother Superior was Sister Celine Heitzman. She was a physician and may have been the first nun licensed to practice medicine in the United States. The hospital opened in 1940 with 12 beds. Because of Dr. Conner's connection with the new hospital, Georgia met some of the sisters and befriended one, Sister Emery, also known as Anna Kavanaugh. It was through this friendship that Georgia eventually converted to Roman Catholicism. Okay.
We grew up in the church, in the Catholic Church, and that's a function of, I think, quite frankly, more than anything, I think it's a function of the nuns who worked with my granddad in founding the hospital in Austin, set my mom on the path that she ultimately took. She saw something in those nuns that she emulated. I suspect she would have been a nun had she not got married to that debonair Dr. Youngblood.
When Georgia was a senior in high school, the sister wrote to Nazareth College about her and encouraged Georgia to attend. As you can imagine, Georgia was perhaps a little concerned about what she would find there. Would the people be friendly? Could she even get into a so-called white college? Or, if she did, were there even good white people out there? In an article in 1947 that before she came to Rochester, she was frightened by the prospect of possible snubs. I never doubted that my coming would meet opposition from, she estimated, at least half the college. But she was excited by this sense of adventure.
She felt equipped, I think, because of the experience she had had growing up. Being Dr. Conner's daughter and experiencing all of that sport.
She was smaller than many of the people in the class. She was kind of a tiny person. I would guess she was 5 foot or 5'1". She was outgoing. She was not the sort of person that took over a room with conversation or joke telling or anything.
Even though she was only about 5'1", She had the heart of a lion. She arrived at Nazareth in 1944 at the height of the Second World War. Her mother brought her, and while her mother was downstairs talking to the father of another student, she looked around to find for a chorus of highs and a number of smiles. She found her sweet mate already in the room. Georgia gathered up her courage, smiled, and went over. This would be Georgia's secret weapon. Georgia would use kindness. She would use her generous nature, her graciousness, in order to disarm and overcome those people who are hostile to her simply because of the color of her skin. She would use it to make friends and break down stereotypes and destroy bigotry. She would do this her entire life. She went over to her sweet mate and she was amazed, she recalled, that she smiled back, made me sit down, and we began to talk. Then a few of her friends came in, and after a confusing set of introductions and exclamations, we immediately set out as one group of people. She recalled that we students had a healthy curiosity about each other, which we satisfied in long sessions of frank discussions young people engage in without embarrassment. We all worked together, shared things, and gradually came to something like a real understanding of each other.
She was harassed a great deal, but there was a core group of young ladies who were very instrumental in her forming some really tight bonds at Nazareth. And those young ladies, there were a few young ladies who were very nice to her, who really kind of took her under their wings.
Over time, she stopped thinking of them as white, but as personalities, good and bad, as Jane or Mary. The campus atmosphere in those days was serious but fun, and Georgia felt like she was a member of that community.
She participated in all the activities that everyone else did.
What a feeling it was to be judged not by my color, but solely by my character and accomplishments. For the first time, the world seemed a fine place to live in.
It was the best time of her life. She had the opportunity to visit New York and travel and see and make great friends through the period of her life where she grew to know who she was, make lifelong friends. I think that was her view, that was the best time of her life.
I mean, Georgia was a friendly person, and she often visited with other students who were residents of Rochester. You know, she would visit them, and I lived in Auburn, and she came and spent a weekend with my family in Auburn sometime during our freshman year.
Now, let me say this. There were challenges.
There was at least one white student, also from the South, who brought with them their own baggage of stereotype and bigotry towards anyone who was black. And these women avoided each other as much as possible with us. But when you're on a campus of 400 or fewer students, that's hard. At the end of their first year, the two ended up in a discussion in which they shared their own lived experiences. Georgia revealed to the student, whom we shall call Libby, the horrors of growing up black in the Jim Crow South. She told her things she'd not told anyone before, things that she tried hard to forget. She then told Libby of her hopes for a future for herself and her children. And, she says, I tried to make her understand my feelings of any school I might wish, to attend any movie, sit in any restaurant, take any lodgings I chose for which I could afford the price. My frustration at not being able to do so, not because of any crime I had committed, but simply because of my color. Libby, she recalled, was rather surprised to learn that I was genuinely proud of my race, proud of the great men and women it had produced. It was a long session, but they became and remained friends after graduation.
But later on, that woman became one of her better friends. They came to a détente, as it were, better understanding of each other.
Georgia recalled, of all the valued friendships I've made, I am perhaps most proud to have made a friend of Libby.
The way she overcame bigotry and prejudice is by performing. That is, not allowing herself to be tainted by it.
Georgia was fond of her singing.
We had a glee club, and I was a member. I'm sure Georgia was a member of the glee club, and we had rehearsals every week and gave concerts.
There were several USO clubs and dances that the young ladies from Nazareth attended.
But in general, everything pretty much that we did, or at least that I recall, was on campus. We'd musical and theater productions, but they were on campus. She was a serious student, always did well.
A book was always around. She was always reading. Oh, a voracious reader. Voracious. Everything. Magazines, newspapers, novels, books, album covers, everything. I want you to read everything possible, from a soup can to a novel to a stop sign, street sign. Everything you can possibly get your hands on. Read that, because it will take you everywhere in the world.
My mom was a thinker. She's very, very bright. And although she didn't necessarily blurt out opinions just willy-nilly, she was contemplative. She really was a thinker. And as a consequence, she was guarded with her words. My mom was not a loud, raucous person.
At the end of her first year, Georgia was voted to student council as the representative of the class of 1948. Georgia had fond memories of her time at Nazareth, and 9 years later, she wrote, "I have so many wonderful memories of those days. The parties we had, the midnight cramming, the dances, the double dates, the shows we put on." Georgia graduated with 79 other students on the 6th of June, 1948, in a ceremony overseen by Bishop James Carney. Georgia was an officer of that class and served as a student council representative at the ceremony. After graduation, Georgia wrote that she went out to fight the private battle that each of my people has to fight daily. In 1957, she said, "I must fight for my rights. I fight now with hope, though," because she had been able to overcome the narrow-mindedness and prejudice of people like Libby. She did say in 1947, a year before graduation, that she knew that her story was not the story of everyone, and that maybe Nazareth is an exception. But no matter where I go or what I encounter through life, I'll know that the races can laugh together, work together, and play together. After college, Georgia went up to the U.S. Marine Hospital in New York, where she did special training in medical technology. And then she took a job at Howard University at the Freedmen's Hospital in Washington, D.C. She worked with Charles Drew, whose work on blood plasma remains inestimable. Georgia stayed in touch with some of her friends.
We used to write regularly, exchanged Christmas cards and notes, that sort of thing. She went to Howard University in Washington, and I went to work in Washington after I graduated, but Georgia wasn't in Washington at the same time. A visit or a vacation or something, and meeting her, kind of a short visit we had.
She also had a classmate who came to live with us for a while. Now, here we are, this was in the 70s, and it was a white woman who, I don't recall her name. She's lived with us for weeks. She had been down on her luck, and Mom hadn't seen her in years. Maybe, I don't know, 30 years. But Mom invited her to stay in our house for weeks. So she sort of kind of got herself together. I can't remember the lady's name.
And she was very busy with her family.
However, Georgia's family reconnected with Carlene.
But her daughter, Therese, she came to visit me, and we've pretty much keep in touch at Christmas time with a Christmas card and photo. And I have recent photos of her daughter.
Georgia herself ended up moving back to Austin, Texas, to work with her father, where she became reacquainted with a friend from high school.
After college, my mom went back to Austin, began dating my dad, who she had previously known, because in East Austin, Anderson High School was the black high school, so they knew each other throughout school, I think, probably since elementary.
She married well. She married a good guy. She did marry a good guy.
That's Conner Youngblood, an optometrist in 1953. And over the next decade or so, they had 7 children.
And quite frankly, in fairness, my mom and dad, who went through a great deal of struggle, etc., would not allow us children to make excuses. Perform because you have the requisite intellectual gravitas. You have the requisite training. You have the requisite ethical standards, moral standards. There is no excuse. Do your best. Doesn't mean that you're going to do well in everything, but definitely do your best.
They moved to Houston, where he began his practice in Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas. As I recall, what I've been told is that his first suite mates were his friend Dr. Mosley, a dentist, and a lawyer named Barbara Jordan.
Theodore Youngblood's suite mate included Barbara Jordan, one of the most famous Texan members of Congress, the first African-American female congressperson from the state of Texas.
My mom worked a lot. She worked a lot, and sometimes she worked at night, what we call a phlebotomist. And then in her later years, probably the last 15 years or so of her work life, she taught school, high school for health professions. Now, my mom was the absolute worst teacher in the sense that she's the teacher we all looked forward to because she was going to be nice to us and we could get over on her. She was going to encourage us. She's going to be. The problem with my mom was your fear was disappointing her.
But my mom was, you know the stories of the teachers who would write on the board and kids would be in the back behind her throwing spit. One day I went to see her at school, and I was looking through the window. She didn't know I was there. And I watched her as she lectured and thought, wow, I saw kids acting up behind her. And I thought that, hey, that's my mom. And I thought, you guys need to act better in front of my mom. And lo and behold, she said, no, I knew exactly what they were doing. She said, I know who the students are. I know who have potential, and I know those who have potential and don't know it. Don't worry about it. They'll get it. They will get it.
Georgia was known for her many acts of kindness and generosity to students. Georgia taught not by threats, but through her love and example.
She went on to play an important role in a number of students doing well in school and going on to have successful careers in the health profession. Physicians, nurses, dentists, etc. She did pretty darn good, quite frankly. But people was what was important to her and influencing her children. When I say her children, I don't mean just us kids, because her students were her children too. Oh, so many stories about the kids who she was a teacher for. And so much money spent on students' lunches, students' pencils, papers, notepads, all of those things. That came out of her pocket. Well, I guess my dad spent a great deal of her income on her students.
He believed in you when you did not. Your failings, your good qualities, your bad ones, and she was perfectly willing to point it out to you, but also willing to take that which you had to help you develop it. Your fear was disappointing her.
Pivotal moment in my life and in my twins' life. Well, I think it was fifth grade. I want to say it was grade 5 or 6. David and I did, in keeping with our efforts to be like each other, we both failed Mrs. Roberts' math class. We both got an F. And so we went home and waited for the the punishment that she received. My mom came home from work, a long day at work. We were sitting on the couch waiting for her. And my mom never spanked us. I don't recall her ever spanking us. But for some reason we thought, this is going to be it, because I don't think we'd ever failed anything before. At any rate, she was very tired, and she sat on the couch, and we explained to her what happened. Or we gave her the report cards, and after a few minutes of reflection, she said, go to the little stereo thing. You know how they used to have stereos that were inside where a TV was, long playing records. And I don't think we had a TV in there, but she asked us to go put on Tchaikovsky. And so we put it on. And she listened. She sat there and listened. And then she asked us each to dance, and she taught us to waltz. That was our punishment. And she said she was disappointed in us. She didn't think we needed anything other than to learn to waltz. And that never left my mind. And what she did was say she was disappointed. And God forbid, I'd take anything but disappointment. The least pretentious person you would ever meet. Now, this is a woman who, in the same vein as Forrest Gump, she interacted with so many very famous and or well-known people with little pretense. Of course, she worked with Dr. Charles Drew. She knew Duke Ellington. She knew a bunch of jazz artists because they would come to their house in Austin because my granddad was a jazz musician. He was a drummer. He played in Duke Ellington's band. So he got the piano in my house, or not in my house now. Satin Doll was composed on that piano in my grandfather's house. You know, a lot of people that she knew, and met and interacted with. Dr. King, for example.
Wow.
She met him. She knew him. And a lot of people, since I was an adult for sure, but maybe even since a teenager, I don't recall my mom ever buying a new pair of shoes or a new dress. I kid you not. I don't remember her ever going shopping for clothes for herself. She never owned a new car. Ever. That just wasn't her. That wasn't. Someone came to our house. One of our neighbors' kids came to our house and criticized the carpet. Now, I know people don't do this anymore, but we had carpet in the kitchen, and there were stains on the carpet. And that kid, teenager, made the comment that you might want to change your carpet, and he wasn't trying to be mean or anything. He said his priority would be to change the carpet in the kitchen. And my mom's response was, my priority is to educate my children. That's what's important. And I don't know if the kid understood it at that moment, but I think he got it later because in a conversation later, he really liked that response from my mom. I don't remember what happened to that young man later, but I remember her saying that.
Georgia remained a woman of faith throughout her life.
For many years, she volunteered at St. Rita. For many years, St. Rita Catholic Church, Our Lady Star of the Sea Catholic Church. When we were young. And remember, she has 7 kids, so she didn't, and she worked full time, so she didn't have a heck of a lot of time. She thought that was important. That's the kind of person she was. She started us doing the Thanksgiving giveaway. That is, we would go do that. But of course, no fanfare, no organized organization, just us. No publicity whatsoever. Just something that she felt like we should be doing, that we should know.
She would do things that you would not know she had done. For example, prior to starting law school, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get into law school. In fact, I had just received my latest rejection letter.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me to contact the man in Houston who had been the first Black architectural student admitted to UT. She then began to tell me that when that kid began as a student at UT, her father was instrumental in ensuring that that guy had food and clothes and a place to stay and, encouragement. So I called that guy, not knowing him or anything about him, and asking if he would consider writing a letter of recommendation for me. Look, that was on a Monday. The following Monday, I was in law school. There are examples of that. She would have laid the groundwork and you didn't even know that she had done it.
I'll give you another story. The reason I'm Dr. Youngblood is not because of me. I had not done particularly well in undergrad because I was chasing some young lady from New York. and lo and behold, I had applied to dental school several times, only to be rejected, quite frankly, legitimately. I hadn't done my best, only to be rejected several times. And finally, I'd gotten rejected 54 times. Well, turns out the 55th time, now that's not 55 years, that's just, several schools over the course of a year of application. She, unbeknownst to me, somehow I get a call from the dean at my dental school, which is Meharry School of Dentistry in Nashville. And he offers me a position in the first year class. And of course I thought it was a joke, but yeah, of course. And of course I show up, and quite frankly, I kick a little butt. I do okay. And I then get accepted to surgery residency, and the graduation speaker of my residency was my former dean at the dental school. So I'm there, receiving congratulations, walking around, talking to people, and my program director, the chairman of my department, my surgery department, is speaking to my former dean. And he's speaking to him about me. And he goes on to tell him a story that the reason I was in that he accepted me in dental school is because he had spoken with my mom. My mom had called and said, I know my son, I know his flaws, but I think he'd be making a mistake by not accepting this young man. Well, my God, I never knew that. So 8 years goes by before I ever found out the reason I got into dental school had little to do with me. It had to do with and what he said was, my mom convinced him that despite my poor performance in undergrad, or less than stellar performance in undergrad, that I had what it. She said I have no illusions about what his flaws are and what he's capable of. But I also know my son. If you give him the chance, he will succeed. So I was like, oh my God, I never knew that. I found out at my graduation from surgery residency. After I finished my surgery residency and I'd gone home, and Mom, you never told me this. And her point was, why did you need to know? Wow. Okay. Thank you for believing in me.
I asked David and Dennis to give their final thoughts about their mother.
She originally wanted her epitaph to say, sing no sad songs for me. Sing no sad songs for me.
The wisdom she would share with you, her thoughts, I think she would share with you and her listeners, particularly if they're students, is that she absolutely believes in you and believes everything that you dream of is absolutely possible.
Georgia Conner Youngblood died at the age of 77 in 2006. Georgia is remembered today at Nazareth College by the Georgia Youngblood Scholarship for Diversity and Inclusion. And of course, Georgia is remembered too because of her extraordinary personality. and the impact she made on the campus. She taught them as much as they taught her. Our thanks to Dennis and David Youngblood for speaking to us by phone, to Carlene Tierney for talking to us, and to Stacy Stahl for her research. And of course, we thank you, the listener. If you like what you hear, let us know. You can email us at publichistory@naz.edu or call us at 585-389-2649.